Union versus non-union. All you gotta do is just say those words, and everyone in their minds is like, "Okay, unions suck, non-unions suck. Non-union's great, union's great." Everybody has a opinion already in their mind, and it's one of those things that's also slightly political, where people have these hard opinions, but they don't actually know what they're talking about. So, today we're gonna kinda talk about where unions came from, the pros and cons of unions versus non-unions. So, keeping all of this in the nature of trade life, we are going to break this down somewhat interestingly. We're going to see how straight I can keep my head while we do this. So, like I said, some people swear by the unions, some people swear against them. And where did it all start? Like where did unions come from? Why do we have them? So, let's kind of shift the whole conversation to the beginning of unions and we'll build up to where it is today. So, if you go to the early 1900s, late 1800s, right in that industrial boom period, things were getting built like crazy around here. All over America, things were just going up, going up, going up, going up. Factories, plants, construction, it was booming. Industrial boom. It's a crazy thing how stories work like that. So, because of how fast everything was going up and the demand was go, 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 well, conditions, they really sucked. They actually sucked really bad. No safety standards, people getting killed regularly, and the answer back then was replace them. We got stuff to do. So, along the way, they the workers started getting together and be like, "Hey, bro, this sucks, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, dude, this is totally terrible. We don't have OSHA. We don't have protections. We don't have a voice. It's you don't show up today, cool, get lost." So when unions started getting formed, the the guys working, they were one guy complains, get rid of him. But if everybody complains, you get hundreds or thousands of people complaining. Now, the company, they got a big problem. And that's really where unions started from. That's where they came from. It wasn't politics, it wasn't like a control thing. It was survival. It's if they didn't do this, guys were getting picked off left and right. Mm. So they really organized something that we take for granted today quite heavily, and we we just don't think about it the same way because you wouldn't think of getting in a lift without a harness, right? But then, harness wasn't really even an option. So we get safer working conditions, fair wages, reasonable hours, better work life balance. The unions were not created to control work, they were created because work was out of control. So, what does a union actually do? Like, actually, at its core, it gives workers a voice. It gives them a voice as a group, just as a whole. So instead of one guy going to the boss like, "Hey man, I need a raise," you've got hundreds of guys doing it all at the same time, negotiating together. So you get called into the office alone, not in a union, you get representation. You have your union rep that goes with you to make sure you're treated fairly and appropriately. So you you get the ability to push back when the employer is saying, "I want you to do this unsafe thing." You get people behind you saying, no, no, we're not gonna do it this way. This is not safe." And out of all of this, the whole push for safety, it it didn't just stay inside of the companies. It led to laws, regulations, accountability. Things like the occupational safety, health, and hazard. Yeah. That's OSHA. And that was in 1970. It it didn't just come from nowhere. It didn't just go poof, showed up. It was workers complaining about working conditions and safety. Guys aren't super happy about going to work, not knowing if they're going to leave. The unions themselves did not create OSHA, but they helped they they helped force the conversation that developed it. And so over time, things started to change. Safety improved, wages improved, conditions improved, and the unions they played a big role in doing that. But just like anything else, it didn't stop there. As companies, industries, as they evolved, laws came in as the companies changed, the role of unions, they had to change too. So, just to level with y'all, I seen both sides of the unions, where you have your good unions and you have your not so good unions. Some of the places it goes to, there's a bunch of crap on the floor, like literally, like someone took a broom and made a pile but didn't sweep it up, and then someone walks by and is like, "Hey man, can you sweep that up?" And then they're all like, "Ain't my job." You know how unions are. So, and that's the part of unions that it does not quite sit right with me when it becomes a not my job, not my job, that's someone else's job. But when you're in the trades, you you take pride in the whole job, not just one small part of it, or just you're you're not taking pride in just that little bit that you did because you are held back in restraints of what you can and can't do. When you have the freedom to rise to the occasion, to do better, perform better, be a better worker, and you get reprimanded for that, it's a little messed up. But that same structure that's protecting the workers, it also can slow things down because of the not my job, your job, not my job, your job, he job, whoever's job. It's one of those. It really depends where you're at. So realistically, it can kind of swing both ways. Now, non-union, what's that all about? So when you're non-union, you ain't got a voice. You are your own voice. So everything really depends on the company you work for a lot more. Good company, you're taken care of. Bad company, they screw you. Pay, safety, job security, it all comes down to who you're working for when you're non-union. But there's some advantages to it, really. So some of the reasons people might choose non-union are things can move faster. You have less structure, less layers, less waiting around. If if something needs to just get done, handle it. Do it. Be the big guy who rises to the occasion to go do that. Just get more flexibility, and you can step outside your role, and you're not confined to a small box. You get to grow faster, stand out more, move up faster. You know what I'm saying? Because you have that freedom. When when you are doing the work of 3 people because you're just that awesome, you can be rewarded for that. You get to move up from that. Maybe you'll become supervisor, manager, CFO, CEO, pick your C. But that only works when the environment is right. So, without the structure, without the protections, without the collective voice, it all comes down to who you're working for and what they allow you to do, what they're okay with you doing. But there's something that a lot of people also don't realize is that if enough workers come together, they can legally form a union. Even if the company does not want it, through laws like the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, overseen by the National Labor Relations Board. That's how strong organized labor can be. So, all y'all who are working for companies that you're like, they treat me like crap, they do done this, they done did that, whatever it is, you get a voice saying, hey, let's not do that. Get with your buddies, get everyone together, unionize the place, put yourselves in a small box, whatever you're feeling. But that also goes back to, again, non-union. If you don't like who you're working for, you got the freedom to move somewhere else where they give you the freedom that you want. If someone's providing unsafe working conditions, who says you got to stay there? Go somewhere else. Might be less pay, might be more pay. It goes both ways. Again, like everything else, there's that swinging door is more like a lazy Susan. It just doesn't spin around, spin around, spin around. But taking the bias out of all of this and really looking at the whole situation, you're left with more or less just a simple truth. Unions, they started because people had no power, they had less options, and that's it. That's genuinely it. That's the whole reason. And it's worth understanding because when we get so opinionated on things and so passionate on these topics, it's important to understand where it came from. Because the intention was never to divide people through this. It was to create a balance between the people doing the work and the people, a balance between the companies and the workers, so that when everyone can go home safe, have good work life balance, and make fair wages. A good union protects its workers, a bad one can protect the wrong workers. A good company can take care of its people, and a bad one can take massive advantage over them. So it's not just about union or non union, it's about leadership, it's about accountability. And whether the people doing the work matter, because everybody matters, but how valued are you by your company? Because no system fixes that. People do. People like you and me. People who are willing to stand up and say, "No, we are not doing this," to organize themselves, to protect themselves. So, hope to shed some light in on the union versus non-union and where it came from. So, when you're pro non-union, you can at least know why and where it started and why it did. And at the end of the day, it still comes down to the company that you're working for, not necessarily just that label in the front that says we're a union.